You're celebrating independence. You're celebrating life. The earth waking up. You're celebrating life. And I'm glad to celebrate with you. But just like freedom, just like independence, where I was dropped on this world in Mexico, there is a saying, tierra y libertad, land and liberty, as if they were the only things that a human being needs. Well, there's something else that we need today, and that is genetic sovereignty, genetic independence, our independence to decide for ourselves what happens with our bodies and what happens with the bodies of all the other organisms with whom we share this world. That freedom, that independence, that sovereignty is something that is not given, is something that has to be fought over and over and over. And I'm really glad to be here with these people who have chosen to stand up against a huge challenge to our genetic independence and sovereignty, to our freedom to decide what happens with our bodies, with the plants that we eat, with the animals that we take care of, and with all the other organisms in the world. Huge challenge happening. I invite you to get involved, to get engaged. This is a question of life. If you celebrate life, please join with the people who are here, your neighbors, in opposing the takeover of your genetic freedoms and your genetic independence. We're doing the same over on the other side, on the coast of the Pacific, where the West ran out of West. We're doing our best there to uphold these principles of genetic independence and freedom, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Our next guest, also here from Vermont, is my friend Ann Peterman. Ann Peterman is the co-director of the Global Justice Ecology Project in Heinsberg, Vermont, and along with several others of us, is the founder of an international campaign to stop the genetic engineering of trees. And Ann has been traveling literally all over the world over the last several years, working with NGOs and the UN and many other channels to try to address the problem of GE trees.
How many of you are familiar with the fact that corporations like Monsanto are also involved in genetically engineering trees? Yeah, not too many people have heard about this. There's a company, though, called ArborGen that's one of the sponsors of the Biotechnology Industry Organization's conference here in Boston, and they are the main pushers of genetically engineered trees in the world. And I think you can imagine what some of the problems might be if a genetically engineered tree were to contaminate a native forest or any of these trees around here. The UN did a study, and they asked engineers who are working on genetically engineering trees what their top concerns were about the technology. And they had two main concerns. The number one concern was contamination of native trees. Their number two concern was public opinion. Now, why would the public be concerned about genetically engineering trees? Maybe because of contamination of native trees. Anyway, we have been fighting the genetic engineering of trees since 1999 when we first heard about it when we were actually in southeast Mexico. Now what they're planning is genetically engineered trees for right here in the United States. And they're planning them for the Pacific Northwest, the Upper Midwest, and the Southeast. They've especially got their sights on the Southeast. ArborGen is based in South Carolina. And what they want to do in South Carolina is put in genetically engineered poplar, genetically engineered pine, and now genetically engineered eucalyptus. Eucalyptus are not native to the United States, but they want to have massive genetically engineered eucalyptus plantations in the southeast United States. And you know what they want them for? They want them for paper, and they want them for biofuels. And do they care that eucalyptus are an extremely invasive tree that takes over native ecosystems and wipes out native species, that it catches fire, that it does all these other things? Not really, no. But they are planning these things, and they are planning them for the very near future. This is something we all need to be concerned about. So I hope that you will check out our webpage, stopgetrees.org, and find out how you can get involved. We have a film that Ignacio, myself, Brian, and others are interviewed in about genetically engineered trees. We have an action toolkit. We have all kinds of ways that you can get involved in stopping genetically engineered trees. They are not deployed commercially yet anywhere in the world except China. So we can stop them from coming to North America, South America, Europe, Africa. We can stop them in all of these places, and we have to. Once these trees start contaminating, there is no reversing that process. It cannot be stopped. And once a native tree is contaminated, it then becomes a contaminant in a never-ending cycle. We're talking about traits such as killing insects. Imagine if that trait got out into a native forest. We now have a native forest that kills insects. Insects are the base of the food chain. Insects feed songbirds and other wildlife. This is a disaster waiting to happen, and that is why we're fighting it. If anybody wants to get plugged in, check out our website, come and talk to me. We'd love to get you involved. Thank you.
As well as being an extreme hazard to biodiversity and all of life on Earth, the biotechnology industry represents the capturing of our very health by corporations. And somebody I've just had an incredible pleasure working with over really just the past day and a half, who's one of the most articulate people on that subject I have ever met, is John Abramson. He's a family doctor from up on the North Shore. He's on the clinical faculty at Harvard Medical School, and he's written a very important new book about the drug industry called Overdosed America. John Abramson.
Brian, thanks so much. And thank you, folks. It's a pleasure to be here with you. The same way that the corporations are challenging our natural environment with genetically engineered crops, with genetically engineered trees, a disaster waiting to happen, we've got a disaster that is happening, and it's the American healthcare system. We are spending twice as much as the other industrialized countries on healthcare, and Americans live less time in good health than the citizens of the next 21 wealthiest countries. This is what we're struggling to pay for, and this bad medical care is what is going to be imposed on all Massachusetts citizens through the legislation that's come in that doesn't question our medical knowledge. Now, the same way that the corporations are challenging our environment with genetic engineering, they are providing the medical knowledge that is guiding the doctors that are taking care of you. The editor of The Lancet, the premier medical journal in the United Kingdom, says the medical journals have turned into information laundering operations for the drug companies. Now, what can we do? The drug companies want us to believe that we need them for good health. Most of our health is determined by how we live our lives, whether we exercise, whether we eat a healthy diet, not smoke, drink in moderation, maintain a reasonable body weight. These are the things that we can do to stay healthy. These are the things we can do to prevent heart disease. And yet the drug companies want us to believe that we need to take these statin drugs to lower our cholesterol, when there's not a shred of evidence from clinical trials that cholesterol-lowering drugs are beneficial for women or people over 65 who don't have heart disease. Not a shred of evidence. Yet the guidelines that come from the American Heart Association tell your doctors to put you on statin drugs. So let me just say that what we need to do is what the women's movement did in the 1960s. We've got to demand that we are treated as subjects, not objects, that we take back control of our own health care, that we find primary care doctors who will talk to us about these things, and most of all, that we understand that when corporations are involved, they have a primary fiduciary and moral responsibility to make as much money as they can for their shareholders and investors. Their responsibility is not our health. We've got to see to our health. We've got to help each other to achieve better health. Thank you.